This is shut. Ah, fuck. No, unshut. Ah, man.
Aquí nomás hay una mamá.
I feel that I must clarify for the listeners before I embarrass myself.
Came from Guatemala to the US, so no one take this shit personal, okay?
His pool's nice. Mine's just bigger.
I wasn't expecting you to be that fucking good.
The way that she was describing it, she said, "This is my Uncle Graham's band. They're canceled."
Welcome to Unshut, a place where if at any point you feel like you need to shut the up, don't.
Hello.
Hey, Graham, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great. You sound excellent. Very high fidelity.
You sound just as good.
Great. The
How's your
system
morning
works.
going?
It's been good. It's been chill. We're close enough to leaving on tour that it's time to have errands to do every day.
I know you've been on this like 18-day break until the second half of the tour, right?
Yeah.
How are you spending it? What's those 18 days been looking like?
I like spreading out the to-do list. So I have one or two things to do every day, and then I spend the rest of the time trying to relax and catch up with all the people back here that I'm supposed to catch up with.
That sounds amazing. Sounds pretty chill. I feel like it's much needed when you're on the road like crazy. I actually thought it was funny that you guys posted like, oh, getting ready to do like the second half of our tour, and then your second half is what, over 20 shows, right?
Yeah, I would call it the second leg. That's how the tour parlance has it, and that feels more accurate. Where it's like it's a whole other tour. There's sort of the final tour, the overarching narrative, and then within it, there's two separate tours and also a little mini tour in between.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time while you're on break to do this with me. I'm very grateful for it. I'm excited.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No, for sure. And I don't know if you've done any research at all, but we do things very differently. And I'll remind you along the way. But this is not going to be like a typical interview you've done. I've done my research and I can guarantee I am going to ask you questions I know for sure you've never been asked before. So it's going to be exciting.
Okay,
And just go along with it, okay? Even if it's fucking whack, just make me feel good in the moment and I'll feel like shit afterwards, okay?
deal.
The way I want to kick off the interview is I was introduced to your guys' music. And for anyone listening, I just didn't think you guys needed an introduction, but we're talking with Graham today from Tokyo Police Club. And I was introduced to your guys' music by my brother. He's a huge fan. And that prompted me to ask you, do you have any siblings yourself?
Yeah, I have a younger brother.
Is there anything music related that he has introduced you to as the younger? My brother that I mentioned, he's younger than I am. So I'm curious.
Yeah, he was a Sigur Rós super fan. He may still be. We haven't talked about Sigur Rós recently, but I was aware of that band and probably I liked them. I knew they were cool, but it wasn't until he went really hardcore into them when we were both in high school that I gave them the proper attention that they deserved, and it was very rewarding.
That's amazing. Do you guys share a lot of musical taste in common?
I think so. Yeah, I think I have a lot more idle time for listening to music, and he has many children and a job, so he probably spends more time listening to, Frozen original movie soundtrack than I do. But when he gets a chance to listen to music, I suspect it's probably similar. We haven't talked about music in a while.
I mean, has he ever asked you to maybe do like a children's inspired album or something for his kiddos?
No, but I'll play music for them all the time. It's great to play for kids. You can't hide behind any bullshit. You can really trick adults pretty easy. And like anyone who fancies themselves a music fan, once you become self-aware as a music fan when you're a teenager or whatever, all the tricks start to work on you and on me and on anyone. That's part of the deal. But kids don't know what's cool and what's not cool, and they don't know that they're not supposed to like a certain kind of melody or that, such and such a chord change is interesting. They just get what they feel out of it. I love the directness of, I mean, not that I'm sitting down giving concerts for them. They don't pay attention that long, but anytime you pick up a ukulele or anything and start to strum at a kid, you really quickly know like what engages them and what they couldn't care less about.
No, you're absolutely right with that. They're so blunt, they're so honest. And it's why I always tell people don't discount the feedback a kid gives you because it's so honest.
For sure. Yeah.
Are your nieces and nephews at an age where they think you're a rock star? Like they have this perception that like, oh, uncle gets to go on the road and he's like killing it out there. Or are they at that age right now in 2024 where they're kind of like, yeah, he's just our uncle?
It's more the latter. They're getting there. They're like starting to figure it out. My eldest niece, apparently she wore her Tokyo Police Club shirt to her gymnastics camp in the summer, and she was telling everyone at the camp because she knows enough to know that I'm in the band, and she knows that the band is ending. But the way that she was describing it, she said, "This is my Uncle Graham's band. They're canceled, so I can't go to that gymnastics class."
So, according to all these, camp counselors, Uncle did something to get canceled in 2024. There we go.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fucking amazing. And so we're going to time travel a little bit because, again, we do things very differently. And so my brother's name is Angel, and something that just, again, it's the way my brain works, right? It's all over the place, it's chaotic. But the way this works for me, or the way it worked out for me, was I wanted to, again, ask you questions you haven't been asked before. And so immediately I'm like, well, his name's Angel. I know in 2008, if I'm not mistaken, don't quote me on that, you guys did a tour with Weezer and Angels and Airwaves. Am I correct on that?
You are correct on that.
Oh, hell yeah. I was a little nervous about that because if I would have fucked it up, this would have been off to a bad start.
All your claims of research would have been immediately called into question.
Oh, I would have started stuttering like fucking crazy.
I'm glad that you were right then.
I'm so glad too. In honor of that, I picked a couple of tracks from Angels and Airwaves to pull some questions out of them. And I do want to also preface by saying they may not have anything to do with their song titles or their actual song, but just work with me, okay?
I'll do my best.
Amazing. So the first one I have is they have a song called Secret Crowds. Is there a secret place after a show that you can think of where Tokyo Police Club likes to go to where they know they can keep a low profile after a big show?
Well, with this tour, the shows have been bigger and the venues have been bigger, and with that kind of comes you get some room backstage. The sort of teeny weeny stage side, inhospitable dressing rooms of yore, which I have a real special place in my heart for, but are not necessarily where you want to spend much time after the show, just due to the closing in that the walls do. But now we got rooms with showers and stuff, and we have a bus, and so it's not very secret. Indeed, the tour bus is one of the more ostentatious ways you could possibly travel around this world, but it certainly is our space, and it certainly is a handy place to keep a low profile, unless someone's waiting for you outside of it.
Oh, for sure. Unless they hear this episode and now they know exactly where to find you, right?
Well, it's not usually difficult to discern, like, hey, what's that giant bus that they're putting all the instruments in right now? I wonder if the band guys are going to get in that in a minute.
No, exactly. Do you remember the first time after a show, even early on in your guys, because I mean, it's been over 20 years, that you recall someone spotting you after a show?
Oh, wow. No, I don't remember the first time. It's probably like the first time we played a show before we even were a band of any kind. But that's kind of part of the deal, especially when you're playing smaller gigs, especially at the beginning when you finish the show. And then, it's been a long time since we did that thing where you play the last chord and everyone cheers and then you immediately start unplugging and taking your shit down off the stage. But obviously at the beginning, we did that every night. And so people would just start coming up to you at the stage right away. And, we would give away burned CDs in the early days. We'd give away, we bake cupcakes that said TPC on them. We'd give those away. So we were really begging to be spoken to, I guess. And so people were speaking to us.
Will Cupcakes be making a comeback at the last final show?
We haven't talked about it. It seems logistically difficult because there's going to be like 10,000 people over the last 4 shows. We used to bake like 1 dozen cupcakes and have some left over for us to eat. I don't know. The last thing I want is to have this. It's one of those things now. You're like, oh, it's a fun idea. We'll hand out cupcakes. And then all you hear about is people griping about how they didn't get a cupcake, and nobody gives a shit that it was fun for the dozen people that got them. All they care about is that they got left out. And so it's easier just to not bother.
I know, especially if I would have been in one of those shows, I probably wouldn't be so bitter about the cupcake because, it's just a cupcake, but the burned CD, oh, I would have taken it so personally if I didn't get one because that is like the most iconic memorabilia you can have.
We made sure everyone at those shows got a burned CD. We spent most of our time preparing for shows. If other than rehearsing, it was mostly just sitting on our parents' PCs, burning CD after CD.
Very
We heard
cool.
Arctic Monkeys did it. That was the story that Arctic Monkeys first would give out their demos on a burned CD, and we're like, well, they're pretty big. Let's do that.
You've got to follow somewhere, right?
Yep. And then it was
Uh,
MySpace. Now it's all on the computer, so that's the end of the burned CD.
Now it's like CDs and vinyls, even though I think vinyls have been making a comeback as far as like merch goes, but it's so true. Like it's just so easy to access it all online. So it's like, what are burned CDs, right?
Yeah, because like a vinyl, people they like to buy something. They like to give you the money at the merch table and then have something to show for it. And especially something big and beautiful in a vinyl has a lot of vibe to it as an object. And I think a lot of people, probably most of the records we sell don't get played. You know, they go in a frame or they go, on a display or even just on a shelf, but as a memento, which I think is really interesting. There's something that I've noticed on this tour, both the shows we've been playing and also some shows I've been to recently that I've never seen before. There's always at least one person in the crowd who's just holding up their vinyl, which I'm like, what does that mean? Am I supposed to react to that? Is that, I think maybe you're just saying you're welcome for buying the vinyl? I'm not really sure, but it's an interesting phenomenon that I will continue to track and study.
I like that. Hopefully, anyone listening, pick up your fucking vinyls of Tokyo Police Club and take them to the show. That's sick.
Yeah, yeah. But most people buy the vinyls after, so they don't have to carry them throughout the gig. It's a pain in the ass to have that. Whatever makes people happy, I'm not complaining.
Absolutely. The second song I have is The Adventure. In a previous interview, you talked about wishing you could have been more present for some of the band's highlights. If you could pick either Coachella or Lollapalooza to redo, which one would you pick?
Coachella. The first time we played Coachella, have been informed repeatedly since was like a big deal. When you're starting, certainly from within the band, there's an experiential thing that happens when it's going well and when you're starting to sort of, really pick up steam. Where just sometimes you'll play a show that's special, that's sort of a moment of an announcement or an arrival. And our first Coachella show, apparently, was very much such a show. And when I think back to it, I do remember, oh yeah, we were playing in the tent, in whatever the cool band tent was, and it was full. It was people were packed out the back, gathering around, which having, spent time at Coachella, I know is not always the case. And it is really represents a lot of people. And I was so hot. I had a really bad headache. I probably wasn't hydrating properly. And there was technical difficulties. The mic was buzzing. It's always shit like that. And so for us, all I remember is getting through that show. And only later did people start to tell me, people we work with, fans, etc. They're like, wow, that was a real moment. Everyone there felt like they were witnessing, you guys ascend. What I'd really like is to like time travel back there and watch it and stand at the back of that crowd at the edge of the back of the tent. I don't even need a disguise. I grew my own and just see what it was like from the crowd, because that's the one thing you never get to find out when you're in a band is what it's like to watch your show.
Yeah, that would be very interesting. And I've never thought about that angle of what it would be like to be on the other side, because I know I mean, obviously, it's not going to be the same if someone reached out to you after this and said, oh, hey, look, we actually have the whole thing on video. It still would not be the same. So,
It's not the same as being there in the moment. And it's even all, I used to have like a wireless guitar for a while because I have my keyboards and stuff. There was too many cables around. I thought I would try that. Then we lost the wireless thing. It was too expensive, so I stopped doing it. But so in sound check, I would go out and I could stand in the crowd and watch the band, and I could hear us, which I liked. It was cool to hear us coming through the speakers. But if I'm not up there, then I'm not really seeing the whole show. And so it's impossible to see your own show through your own eyes. It literally, you could put a giant, I guess you could put a giant mirror in front of you. And then immediately everyone would be like, take that away. This is the worst. It's like when we did Letterman, there's TVs everywhere facing you with you on them. And so if you're not careful, you see yourself in real time be on Letterman. And that is too much information while you're trying to play a song.
oh, I couldn't even imagine the nerves, but I love that this is such a good reminder because I feel like that's something, even as we get older, we finally realize how quickly time really does go. And I think this is just a really good reminder, even for, creative beings out there to, of course, get lost in your creativity, but it's okay to also be in the moment and not get caught up in the rush of things because you lose so much of that time when you finally realize it's past, it's gone.
Well, and we were, the sort of the 4 years where Tokyo Police Club was going from our basement in suburban Ontario to the highest heights we ever got to basically were exactly the 4 years that most people are in college. And so we were also at an age like how does anyone remember their college experience? It's a blur, right? Very few people can give you much for a million reasons. Like, yeah, it's because you're wasted the whole time probably, but also you're young. And why would you, when you're 20 years old, why would you ever stop and look around and consider the impermanence of all things? Like, that's not for a 20-year-old. That's for a 37-year-old to look back on wistfully. But like, that's all part of the gumbo of life is, you can't do it when you're 20. I wish that I could go back and get those memories back now to cherish them, but I should never say I regret it, because had I been sitting there the whole time going, wow, wow, let's all stop and look around, then I wouldn't have been present. I would have been outside the moment trying to spectate on it. And I think I did enough of that anyway. So it's just one of those things. It's too bad, but also it's a good lesson. And that's how you learn. It's the only way to learn that it's important to be present is to first not be present. All you young kids, this is my advice. Nobody listens to advice. They're not going to listen to me. They're going to live their own life. And then they'll find out that I was right. But that'll be 15 years from now. And that's just the way she goes.
No, absolutely. I couldn't have said that any better, dude. Like, it's so spot on. The last song I have is they have a song called Sirens. Does Graham believe in sirens and mermaids? What's your theory on them?
No, of all the cryptids and mythological creatures, sirens and mermaids feels the most like it was just. I don't want to be disrespectful to the explorers and brave people who set out on rickety sailing ships in the early days of exploration and sail. They were certainly more courageous than I'll ever be. I don't know if the like scurvy addled brain of an uneducated 17-year-old, deck swabbing seaman in the 16th century is necessarily a reliable source of intel regarding what's going on in the ocean. I like the notion, and I find myself increasingly inclined toward choosing to believe in stuff like that, or accepting it as sort of like a grand metaphor that I can't quite understand or fathom, no pun intended, but am happy to go along with. So I think that while there may not literally have been mermaids or sirens in the ocean, there were basically mermaids or sirens in the ocean. They were experiencing in a world that still had mystery and magic in it, and they were out there on the ocean being a 17-year-old uneducated deck swabber. The mermaids were real to them, and I think that that does have value, even if it's not scientifically, empirically provable.
Dude, it's like I feel like you could write a book with some of these answers. Like, I mean, I was expecting you to be like poetically good with your words. I wasn't expecting you to be that fucking good.
Well, that's part of the job. We do a lot of talking, especially now in the podcast world.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for going along with those three songs to honor my brother and the discovery of your music. And totally random, though, I have a tattoo that's, in honor of my brother. Because his name's Angel, I got some angel wings on my arm. And so many people always ask me, like, oh, what happened to your brother? So everyone always thinks he's dead. He's not dead. We're honoring him because I love him so much. But I'm curious to ask you, I don't think I've ever spotted a tattoo on your body. Do you have any, or are they just
No,
hidden?
yeah, I got nothing.
Is that just something that's never really piqued your interest or just not your vibe?
I never thought of anything that I wanted to have on my body forever. Yeah, so far, I feel like I got lots of years left. So yeah, I never sought it out, and nothing ever occurred to me that made me change my mind. So
What about piercings? Do you have your ears pierced or anything like that?
no, I wear glasses. I wear a watch.
There you
That's kind
go.
of not everyone accessorizes with a digital watch in the 21st century. So that's my concession to accoutrements.
There you go. Who needs permanent shit when you can just accessorize and switch them out? I like that.
Yeah, get a new band season by season.
Exactly. There you go. So obviously we couldn't talk about song titles without talking about your music catalog, but we'll get to those here in a little bit. And I am also very notorious for butchering names on the show. So just to give you a little bit of how my mind works, on everything where I have your name on my notes, I had to spell it Gram as Graham
Hmm.
because I would have been like Graham, Graham, and I struggle with that shit.
I don't even know how to pronounce my name.
That's
I
fair.
people ask me, and I'm like, I don't know. Don't if I and if it, now if I say it and I'm thinking about it, I'll say it in some completely bizarre, unprecedented pronunciation. I'm very fond of my name. I'm very happy to have it, but it's got that. It's the H in the middle is tricky. It's a soft consonant, and so I often find, if you're at a loud bar or somewhere where they have to call out your name for your order, I get a lot of like Grant just because they don't when I it's hard to loudly, oh, my name is Graham, you know? There's no it's not like Joshua where it's bam bam bam, David, bam bam, Graham. It's sort of one and a half syllables.
No, it definitely set me for a loop. And as I'm journaling and I'm writing questions that come to mind and figuring out ways to keep this shit creative, right? So it's not another episode of, Graham talking about his favorite song and the touring process and all that shit, right? Which is good to have, but I like to keep things fresh for my guests. You've been doing this for a long time anyway, so
It's
it's good to
true.
have. So as I was journaling, I realized I kept writing GRAM for my sake of, sanity. So I wanted to ask you, have you guys ever been mistaken, like on stage? Like, has anyone ever called you guys up or presented you or anything like that? I know Tokyo is in your name. Has anyone ever been like Tokyo Police or, Tokyo something and not called you by the actual band name? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Actually, the first time we did Letterman, because when you do that show, they put you in like this little closety green room in the basement, or at least back in 2006. There's a old little television down there, but it's just playing the feed from upstairs. So they shoot that show. It's like live to tape. So they shoot it during the day. You probably already know all this, but just for the context for the listeners, even though it's not literally live at night, it is filmed and performed for the audience as though it's live. And so you're watching your episode of Letterman unfold in real time on the TV in the basement. And at the beginning, he says, okay, we got a great show today. So and so is here. I forget who our mutual guests were, but that he said, and Toyota Police Club is here. And fortunately, Paul Schaefer, a fellow Canadian, was like, Dave, Dave. And they had a whole back and forth where he sort of coaxed Dave. He was like, where are Toyotas made, Dave? It kind of shook out great because instead of just getting one quick mention, they spent like 1 full minute of the show saying the band name over and over again. Also, it was so funny. You're so worked up. I mean, my God, we were 20 years old playing on the David Letterman show. I mean, this is something my grandma can understand. This is real success shit. And you're down there and you're in the Ed Sullivan Theater where the Beatles made their first appearance in America. And my God, this building is full of history. And there's the real David Letterman is above your head and on the TV camera. And holy shit, your nerves are all going. And they tell you, they're like, when they say it's time to go, you guys got to be up there and playing like 1, 2, 3, 4. This thing is live to tape and we're not screwing around. Dave wants to go home. And so you're all full of nerves and self-consciousness, and then it just all gets punctured in this one moment. It was so funny. He just says the wrong name for the band, and it takes all of the it's really humbling, and it's a real reality check. I'm glad it happened. That's like a classic example of something that in the moment probably felt like, oh no, but in retrospect was exactly the right thing. The universe was helping us along the way.
No, hell yeah. And instead of Tokyo Police, it's Tokyo Hotel. That's where my mind went. There's a band called Tokyo Hotel. And as I was journaling, I'm like, oh, shoot, I wonder if anyone's ever mispronounced or mistaken them. So I love that story. That's fucking hilarious. But I love the humbling moment part of it too. But it's also a good way to see or a good way to say it's one way to get your fucking jitters out. Laugh it off and move on, you know?
Absolutely. You got to remember that it's really easy still, like on stage to this day, to get in your own head and to lose track of yourself and where you're at in the show. And something goes wrong on stage, the monitors don't sound right, or your amp's doing something it's not supposed to, and it's easy to get mad. You start to feel like, this like it's being done to you. And it's like once I was we were playing in Florida. We were playing at a festival in Florida, real like late in the tour. Everyone's exhausted, unhealthy, hungover. It was so hot out, and my little synthesizer that I used was like a digital synthesizer. So it's just a computer. And, computers don't love to sit out all day in the swampy Florida humidity. And this particular keyboard, the way that it would malfunction was it would display on the screen like an error code like you'll see on a PC, where I don't want, like, that's too many letters and numbers after the word error for me to understand on a musical instrument. But when it did that, whatever the last note I'd played was, it would just freeze that note, just going, and it just loud, distorted, horrible. And it had happened a few times on that tour, so I was already cranky about it. And it happened again at that show. And I just was like fuck this keyboard. And it's a little guy, so I just went to whack it from the bottom. I was like, I'm just going to send it flying. Fuck it. I don't even care anymore. But I forgot that in those days, I taped it to the stand because it would shake around on the stage. It would move all over. So it's easier just to use like gaffer tape and stick it to it. And so I whacked it and it's still going, and it just went straight up at a 90-degree angle and then just stood there in front of me. And it was so funny. And I just, in that moment, the same thing, I just realized like I am being such a brat. I'm being such a baby, having a little tantrum on stage about oh no, my keyboard broke. Boo hoo. And again, the universe was just reminding me that this is funny and it's okay. And you don't need to, not only do you not need to get mad, it's the exact wrong response to this situation is to get angry about it. I consider that a real watershed moment in terms of my ability to keep it chill on stage.
Hell yeah, absolutely. It's a good reminder. I know that you guys have been open about how you guys got your name. I was also reading how you guys use like a random generator to come up with the name. That's correct, right?
That's correct.
In honor of the randomness that came from this name, which is now obviously this iconic name, I'm going to throw out some names that maybe this would have been the route the name would have taken in an alternate universe, okay? And I
Okay,
just want to know, would you approve? Yes or no? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
The first one I have is Tokyo Fire Department Club.
Doesn't really roll off the tongue, does it?
It doesn't.
I think I'd press the button again on that one.
Perfect. The second one I have, and this one, I'm just going to go ahead and disclaimer, I'm allowed to see this. I came from Guatemala to the US, so no one take this shit personal, okay? The second one I have is Border Patrol Club.
Well, in 2005, when we named the band, although I don't know that we would have gone with that name, I don't think that we would have quite grasped the potentially problematic nature of it. And so I'm very glad that that's not what came up on the name generator. Even the police thing got a little dicey there a few years ago. People pretty much understood that we're kidding. So it wasn't a real problem, but it was as close as I want to get to being associated with any kind of law enforcement apparatus.
No, seriously, thank you so fucking much for saying that because when I journaled about this, I was like, oh, should I even do this? And I'm like, they've got police on their fucking name. They know, they'll get this.
Exactly.
The third one I have is Tokyo Mall Cop.
That's a good band name because the beauty of the concept of the mall cop is that it's so inherently undignified. And it's good. That is, I think that that's about the level of respect that all law enforcement deserves, frankly, and not to get political. So I do like that as like a proper piss take. And in Tokyo, too, the malls in Tokyo are quite futuristic, quite advanced. I would imagine their mall cops are probably like androids or something. It paints a whole picture. It asks a whole question. Tokyo mall cop. I like that.
All right, so we've got our first contender. I fucking love it. The
That's
next
a
one
freebie. Some kid out there making Ableton music or doing, incomprehensible hyperpop. Tokyo Mall Cop. That could be a good name. And we're vamoosing. We're seeding the Tokyo band name ground. So someone is welcome to get in on it.
Can't wait to see that come to fruition. We'll see who picks it up.
Yeah, yeah.
The next one I have is Tokyo Security Club.
A security club is an interesting concept. I mean, really, what is a band if not a club where you feel secure? Security club sounds like like an institutionalized safe space. It's too many syllables though. That's my note. Tokyo Security Club. Tokyo Security Club. It's almost musical, but not quite.
Okay, how about Bodyguard Club? No Tokyo, just
Bodyguard Club.
Bodyguard.
Well, I'll tell you, I wouldn't want to hang out there. But as a band name, especially for like four wafy indie rock white kids from Ontario, that'd be pretty funny. Nobody looks less like bodyguards than we do.
That's perfect. The last one I have is Tokyo Fashion Police Club.
I think Tokyo Fashion Police or Fashion Police Club would work, but Tokyo Fashion Police Club runs into the same. It's a mouthful. I mean, Tokyo Police Club is already a bit of a swing as far as band names are concerned, but you certainly don't want people to not be able to say it.
Perfect. Well, I just want to go ahead and disclaimer, Graham, that was just warm up, okay? We're going to move on to something different. And then the thing we're going to do after this, it's going to get just a little bit more random. So that was just your warm up. You passed. It was phenomenal. Great work for sure.
Thank you very much.
So I took some song lyric lines to ask you questions. And just a reminder, we honor lyrics and song subtitles very differently here, so they may not have anything to do with the song. So don't come at me for it, okay? Don't try to be like, oh, you fucked this song up. Don't mean to do that, to all the fans listening. But the first one I have is Nature of the Experiment. There's a line in there that says, "It's not the way my mother talks." In your best mom voice, what is something you can hear your mom say to you that just lingers in your head?
Wow. My mom doesn't really have any catchphrases. I feel like I'm doing my mom voice sometimes. I'll be talking to people or like I'll be talking to kids, nieces, nephews, etc. And there's like this I guess irony is the best way to put it or this sort of like arch verbose way of regarding I think it's really funny to talk to kids like that because it's so not childlike and I feel like that's how my mom would talk to me sometimes as I get older I appreciate it more and more but I'm not coming up with a good example.
Like one I know that comes to mind when I was journaling this, and this is something I know my siblings will appreciate. My mom would say it in Spanish, and it was basically reminding us, like, hey, there's only one person in charge here. And so my mom would always be like, aquí nomás hay una mamá. And that would be her way of like putting her foot down and being like, everyone's trying to, make authoritative claims and shit, and there's only one mother here. So that's where I drew that inspiration, that question from. So
I love that. I remember when I was a kid, it was popular among kids to call each other bub, like B-U-B, like Wolverine. Well, I didn't get it from Wolverine. I don't know where I got it from. But I remember my mom, for a period of time when I was misbehaving or whatever, and she needed to get my attention, she'd be like, listen, bub. And I would always be like, hey, that's our word. That's a kid's word. You can't invoke that word to try and get me to pay attention. But it worked. And now when I think of listen, bub, I only think of my mom, not even Wolverine.
okay, so now I am freaked the fuck out because that's actually something to this day I say almost on a weekly basis. And even to my siblings, I'll be like, "Chugada bub." It's so fucking random. That's
I love
funny.
that. Isn't that in the Spider-Man theme song too, though? It's like, is he strong? Listen, bub. He's got radioactive blood. So maybe she was just quoting Spider-Man that whole time and I didn't realize it.
There we go. Now we know the secret to where it originated from because I for sure did not know that.
If it's Wolverine and Spider-Man, maybe it's like a Stan Leeism.
There you go. That's the
There you
origin
go.
of it.
Aha!
The next
Mystery
one,
solved.
mystery solved. The next one I have is from Citizens of Tomorrow. Computers rule the planet. And this was in 2006. Way to be ahead of your time with that line, by the way. Does the
Yeah, kind of
advance
called that one.
No, you really fucking did. Does the advancement of technology in 2024 excite Graham or intimidates him?
It doesn't excite me. I don't know that I feel intimidated by it. I would say I feel dismayed more than anything. I think that technological advancement, in theory, is a great idea. Every once in a while, you'll hear about some medical science advancements, and it does seem like there's one field where they're still like, yeah, don't worry, we're curing diseases over here with computers. We're the people using them, right? But everywhere else, every other technological advance that they've come up with in the last 10 years, maybe accepting video conferencing, which has enabled me to appear on far more podcasts than I used to, is in the wrong direction, I should think. But of course, it's all towards the accumulation of the almighty dollar. So that's not to be surprised by, I suppose.
Totally random, but obviously that line was in 2006. How many years after the fact did any of you guys acknowledge, holy fuck, we're where we are at with times with technology? You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, we name checked 2009 in the song, and I remember 2009 came and went, and we were like, okay, maybe not quite. The last few years, every time we've played that song, it's kind of you've sensed it in the room that people are like, oh, this is because the whole notion behind that song is the idea was to write a song about the future, but from the perspective of like the 50s, when you see like an atomic age video they made back then where they're like, by the 1990s, man, we'll have established a colony on Jupiter. And that kind of weird optimism. And that's where the name Citizens of Tomorrow is, I think it sounds like a kind of, 1950s, like the name of a Buckminster Fuller book or something. And then Dave obviously went in a more dystopian direction, but also with the robots and the sci-fi and all the 50s-ness of it. But then it stopped being a joke, sort of, or it started being, a little more of a metaphor for something true rather than a sort of a tongue-in-cheek look at, the mistaken assumptions of the past. I mean, I think as soon as the computers took over the music industry, that's when we really started to notice it, unsurprisingly.
Someone time traveled when they were writing that lyric for sure.
Like how The Simpsons predicted everything. If you just are cynical about how things are going to go, you're pretty much right all the time, which is not great. It's not a good news situation, but it does seem to be basically accurate.
Exactly. The next one I have for you, I'm going to read you the line and I want you to see how quickly you can tell me the song. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Where I was always a winner and I was usually right.
That's Bambi. As,
Beautiful.
as soon as you said it, I could hear in my head, blip, 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 but it just took me a second to remember what the name of that song is.
Perfect. So my question about that song is, can you remember a time where you felt invincible or maybe something got to your head a little bit too much?
A lot of times on stage. You know what it really was though. In the early days of the band, I really thought I was so smart, and I forgive myself for it because we were high school kids, and we were like, "Let's start a band. We'll be successful." And everyone said, "Don't do that. That's a terrible idea. Don't start a band. You guys have potential. Go be lawyers." And which is sad when that's what they meant by potential, but anyway. And then we were like, "No, we'll do it anyway. We'll show you." And then we were successful right away. We paid our dues, but we paid our dues after people started caring about our band, and like Pitchfork started reviewing us. And so as a 19-year-old, I basically thought that I was the cleverest little fucker on earth. I was pretty proud of myself. And I was really happy to dispense wisdom and advice to other bands. And I remember after shows chatting with opening bands and stuff and really like laying the truth on them and trying to and thinking I was helping and thinking, oh, they're so lucky to get this wisdom from me. I'm someone who knows. And my skin crawls when I think about that now because I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything. I knew less than most people because all that had happened to me was that I had gotten lucky and I thought it made me smart. And so I really just hope that none of those bands took any of my advice. That's my sincerest wish.
No, I mean, it doesn't get any more honest than that. And with honesty comes my last and final one, which is actually one of my new favorite words because of this song, Tesseltel, okay, which I struggled with pronouncing it. I fucking practiced, don't worry. But
Tessellate.
tessellate, there you go. See, and I fucked it up anyway. So
It's a weird word. I didn't know that word until Dave put it in the song either.
there's a line on there that says, broken hearts tessellate tonight. Is there a part, and this one we don't have to get too deep into it or get in our feels about it, but I'm truly curious because I did look up the definition and I was intrigued by the definition. Is there a part of you today that feels like the difficult moments of this journey with your bandmates will bond you forever?
Oh, absolutely. It's more than a part of me. I know it. I think we all probably know it in our various souls. It's familial, right? And that makes it different. And already, we started the band. We were friends. This was not like an ad in the newspaper situation. We were kind of already four guys who were on an adventure together. And so the band was really a logical extension of that. And then you don't realize, you're making a very weird deal with the universe to start a band with your friends because if and when it gets successful, now you're friends with your friends, you're involved in a creative collaboration with your friends, which is an incredibly vulnerable and intimate relationship to have with someone. You're in a van and hotel room with your friends all the fucking time, and you're running a business that is all of your own livelihoods with your friends, and it's the four of you or all of those things. It's more than a marriage. It's more than a sibling relationship in a lot of ways, and you chose it, you stepped into it, and so you also have a different relationship with it, and that is incredibly rewarding and incredibly fun and beautiful. And especially when you're young, being like four brothers against the world in the van is it's a kind of love and intimacy that I never would have experienced had I not done this. And it's not what I thought I would get out of being in a band, but it was and continues to be incredibly rewarding. And also there's been times, you have siblings, it can be hard. And when you're collaborating with people creatively, that's not always going to be smooth. And when you're running a business and making money decisions, that's not always going to be smooth. And when you're in close quarters on the road all the time, you're not always going to be on the same page. And then you age. And as the time goes by, you're like, Jesus, I have other things in my life now, but also I've got my brothers and I've got my band, and we never had to balance it at the beginning. And then as time goes by, you do begin to learn to balance it more. So it's an incredibly complex relationship. And it's another piece of advice that I won't bother giving because I know no one would take it. I think the only way you can enter into this kind of partnership is naively. And you just have to learn by doing it. And I'd like to say I wish that I'd known a little more going in so that I could have been a little more conscientious and responsible with my own personal behavior and the way that I interpreted my brother's behavior. But That's how you learn. And anyone that's been in a band for 20 years knows that, you get bruised and you get hurt and you hurt other people, but also you get healed and you become someone that you would never have become without these other people. And so they're literally part of you forever and you're part of them. But also it makes it really easy. Like I haven't been chatting with the guys in between tours, we're not like getting together to hang out. We see enough of each other on the road. And so it changes the friendship. 20 years ago, we would hang out with each other only. And now it's like, well, we get our fill basically. And so with the band ending, it's really interesting because now all of our relationships are going to enter this new phase. And I can't wait to find out like what those guys are to me and what I am to them without the band being in the middle, like kind of holding all of it. We just get to be folks again, which is pretty cool.
Well, and I feel like you said it so perfectly in regards to like the beauty that comes out of that ending era, right? I mean, you said it so well yourself. It was a choice. And I think sometimes it's really good to realize that you're choosing these people. You chose this path. And I think that makes it a little bit more of a strong standstill when it comes to these relationships. And like you said, what is going to happen post tour and this being the end of an amazing era is what's going to create the longevity in those friendships because you chose to do this together. I think that's amazing.
And we'll have always, I mean, it's not quite the same as, having gone to World War II together, but we'll always have had these crazy, we have this frame of reference that only the four of us understand. I know there's three other people in this world who get me in a very specific way that no one else can. And that's not to say I don't have other intimate relationships and there's not other people who get me more or get parts of me that the guys in the band don't get. But the band thing is it's the fucking band. It's my band, and it was their band too. And so, yeah, we're bonded forever.
No, that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. I feel like this is exactly why I like to take artists through memory lane in a very unique way because it's refreshing for you guys to do so, but also something that's going to live on the internet forever and something that maybe one day even your nieces and nephews they'll come across this interview and they'll have a little bit more of an appreciation to the journey that you had with this band. So
I hadn't thought about my nieces and nephews listening to all of these. Well, that's fine. I've been fairly cogent.
I think they're going to be proud.
No, I'm just kidding. I love it. I'm really happy that some of them are old enough now to be able to catch us on this tour because I'm so proud of what we do and we're really good at it. And I go up there and I'm like, I kick ass at this. It's not to toot my own horn, but like it looks really cool. I'm up there, doing moves with a guitar and lights are flashing and 1,000 people are cheering and, holding their arms out to me like I'm some kind of deity, which I most assuredly am not. And my nieces and nephews certainly know that. But it's nice for them to see me in that mode. It's I'll never look this cool again.
Hey, well, you never know. Maybe, even after the fact, Drake will still be like this amazing artist still doing his thing and it'll still be relevant in the years to come, which brings me to my next thing. Why would I say Drake, right? Well, I don't know. Graham, you posted Drake trivia on your Instagram many, many years ago, and that inspired our next segment. Are you ready?
I am about to find out.
This is called Drake Trivia, inspired by an Instagram post you made years ago. So I'm going to ask you some quick questions on Drake just to see how much of a Drake trivia badass you are. Are you ready?
I am ready, but before we begin, I feel that I must clarify for the listeners before I embarrass myself that here in Toronto, before we had Aubrey Graham, Drake the rapper, we had a like hotel, restaurant, bar, venue combo called the Drake Hotel, which has nothing to do with Drake the rapper and is instead just sort of like a hipster gentrification hotel in a neighborhood that was, they took a hotel that like people lived in for years and they kicked them all out and turned it into a bougie bar and a venue that like I would go to. Sorry, everybody. And they had a weekly trivia night that I used to participate in weekly. So Drake trivia in that context was trivia at the Drake Hotel, which was general knowledge trivia and featured no questions about Drake the artist, about whom I know very little. So that being said, let's see how little I know.
That is fucking amazing because again, I take pride in asking guests questions they've never been asked before, right? And I know for sure, and even in the beginning of part of this, I know I've already asked you questions you haven't been asked before, but I was like, how can I guarantee my way to knowing he's never been asked this before? Saw that post, here we go, and I love that now it had nothing to do with Drake. Are you ready?
No, we just have multiple things called Drake in this city. That's very Toronto. I
That's
am ready.
amazing. So, what hotline was Drake answering late at night?
Is that Hotline Bling?
Yes.
The Bling Hotline? Okay, great. I wasn't sure if there was more lore surrounding the hotline. Yeah, Hotline Bling. I know that one. That's the one with the dance, the music video.
Hell yeah, look at that. We're off to a great start. Prior to his music, what show was Drake on?
Degrassi, the next generation.
Now you got me excited because I was like, yes, I'm going to get him with this trivia, but you're killing it so far. The next one, you already kind of already said it on your own without me asking, but what do you and Drake have in common?
It's a name.
The
His
name
last name is
Graham.
my first. That's right. Just 2 grams. By the way, I think Aubrey Graham is a beautiful name. I know it's not really like a superstar rapper moniker, so I get why he used Drake, but Aubrey Graham just it's like it sounds like a author, which maybe he'll become.
I know that I kind of have a thing for like switch. I know it's not politically correct to say nowadays with like boy and girl names, but I do love that. Like I used to know a girl named Charlie, and I thought that was the
Yeah.
cutest name ever. So I love that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
not that I'm giving the name Aubrey a gender. No one cancel me, please.
Well, it's beautiful because it can be anything. So it can be for boys or girls or beyond. It would be just as beautiful for anything.
Exactly. Thanks for saving me there. I don't think I'll get canceled on this one.
No, it's Uncle Graham who's been canceled.
There you go. Exactly. According to all the summer camp counselors from your niece.
Yeah, all the 6-year-old gymnasts.
Exactly. Finish the sentence. Drake is also known as Champagne.
Pappy.
Yes. Damn, that's so fucking good. What is Drake's biggest hit? Also, number one song on Spotify. And I made sure to note that I wanted this one to be a little bit difficult. So
Is it Hotline Bling?
it's not.
I don't. Can I name one other Drake song? Views is the album. What's the one where he raps about how his pool is bigger than Kanye's? I like that song. That can't be his biggest song though. That's from an EP.
Damn, now I'm gonna fail at this trivia myself.
It's
I have
really
no
funny. I
idea.
just remember the line. He's like, "It's something like my pool's bigger than Ye's," and he's like, "His pool's nice, mine's just bigger." That's all I'm saying, which I just think is such a funny line. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have an answer. I don't even have a. I could cheat. I could open Spotify, but I'm not going to do it.
I didn't know this one either, and I was actually very surprised this was the answer, but it's one of his songs called One Dance. I didn't know that, so that's the one.
Maybe if I heard it, I recognize it.
It's not my favorite one, so we're not gonna play it. We're good.
All right, deal.
The last couple of questions I have for you before we wrap this up in a very unique way you haven't done before, I wanted to ask you real quick. Post-tour, will there be a part three to The Lakes of Alberta?
Not anytime soon, because there was never going to be a part two. It was just a thing I made when I was 21, and then it just occurred to me like 15 years later I had some new ideas around it, and so I just followed the ideas. And so I think more like another decade plus would have to pass, because it was only interesting to me to make a second part because it was a chance to, like, this is so pretentious, but it was a chance to like converse with my younger self and reconsider these youthful notions I had. And because the first one was allegedly about older people, and I was finally catching up to the age that I was writing about when I was 21, and I was realizing, as I think most people as they get older realize, that they didn't know shit when they were 21, especially about what their life was going to be like in 15 years. That like dissonance and trying to square that circle was really exciting and appealing to me. And so I think I'm going to have to wait until part two starts to feel like callow and naive, and then maybe I'll have the creative energy to respond to it.
Well, we will definitely wait patiently for it. No worries on that. But lastly, can you tell everyone where they can find, to all the listeners, where they can find all the tour dates, all the info, the venues, the tickets, all that good stuff to come out and see you on this last final tour?
TokyoPoliceClub.com. That's the simplest way. Like, if I don't know what the age demo listening to this is, so if anyone out there is 17 and is like .com, that's like, you go into a web browser, you type that, and it takes you to a whole special website that's just for us. It's not our Twitter, it's not our Instagram, it's not our Facebook, it's our website. It's a whole page that's just about Tokyo Police Club. It's pretty cool. We used to all have them. It was called GeoCities, Wikipedia, but we're also on all the various social media platforms under the name Tokyo Police Club. So if you don't want to go into Chrome, it's okay. Just search Tokyo Police Club on Instagram, and there'll be tons of pictures of us. And I'm sure we have a pinned post with all the info, or the link is in bio. Link in bio, baby. That's the real truth.
That's the number one way to sound so young these days. Link in bio, link in
Link in
bio.
bio, kids. Hashtag link in bio. And then I floss.
Exactly. The very last thing. In a previous interview, Graham, you talked about your broadcasting voice, and you talked about how a teacher complimented your voice and it stuck with you, which is so awesome that I just saw this yesterday, by the way. So this was a very last minute thing, because I too had a science teacher who like complimented my speaking voice, and fast forward to like having a podcast, right? So the
Yeah.
last thing we're going to do, in your best broadcasting voice, whatever that that sounds like, I want you to give the listeners a "This is Graham from Tokyo Police Club, and you're watching Unshut." And that'll be the wrap.
All right, let's see which kind of temperament do we want? Because there's the ID one where I'm just a guy in a band, so I'm kind of like fun and cool, and I'm not the host, and I'm like, "Hey, this is Graham from Tokyo Police Club, and you're watching Unshut." But then if I was like, "Oh, I'm voicing this," it'd be like, "Hi, this is Graham from Tokyo Police Club, and you're watching Unshut." Or you can NPR it. You can be like, "Hey, it's Graham from Tokyo Police Club, and you're watching Unshut."
Damn, I got three. I feel so fucking special.
Yeah, all this is my reel. I'm gonna print this out and send it as my resume to all the radio stations around Toronto. That's gonna be my new job.
Exactly. For your next hit daytime television show, I can see it happening for sure.
That would be so fun. I assume I'm gonna be like the new Ellen.
There you go.
Not
Or
in
the
terms of
David
success, just in terms of behavior. I'm gonna be a failure, but I'm gonna be a huge dick to everybody, and no one's gonna be allowed to look at me.
or the new David Letterman, and then I'll come on to your show and you can butcher my name, you can, mispronounce
Yeah,
whatever.
this is shut. Oh fuck, no, unshut. Ah man. Oh,
Exactly.
we'll get it
Thank
next
you
time.
so much for that. I appreciate it so much. Thank you for making this episode extra special today. And thank you so, so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. That was a wonderful conversation. I loved all the questions. I loved talking about stuff I don't usually get to talk about and not having to answer questions about what tour is like until my next interview right now. And it was great. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it.
Of course, take care of yourself.
You too. See you around.
Hey, if you've made it this far, don't forget to follow the socials on the screen or in the description below. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel. See you next week.